Gary School Board.
Justin Cass, President, Classroom Teachers Association.
Maria Lloyd, Principal, Limestone Creek Elementary.
Dave Talley, Audit Committee.
Debbie Manso, Audit Committee member.
Very good. Noah Silver, Audit Committee.
Long Chu, Inspector General.
Joyce Edison, Inspector General.
Ron Bennett, Audit Committee.
Leanne Evans, Treasury Department.
Mike Burke, CFO.
Heather Canoose, Budget Director.
Chantel Knowles, RSM.
Let's go back here in the corner. Someone's hiding.
Okay, Office of Inspector General.
Thank you. Well, Inspector General.
Operations Division.
Transportation.
Spencer Jackson, Transportation.
Transportation Committee.
Welcome, everybody. I think we should look at the agenda because we have a lot of transportation here. So, I don't want to get in too much trouble here. Let's see. I know, Mr. Chu, I have to go in a certain order. You guys are very particular about that. Where is transportation? Which number?
We don't have that.
Yeah, I read something there. There is something.
All right, we'll get to it in a minute then. I'll discern the situation. The next thing we have to do is,
I don't really think so.
yeah, approve the minutes, all right? Approve the agenda. Okay.
Second.
Second, so move. I just want to hold that before we go for a vote on it. First of all, we're going to have how many members do we have? 1, 2, 3, 4. So we have enough members. We have one more coming. What item do you want to discuss, transportation?
We'd like to talk about the discipline issue that was of concern and the accident reviews that was done in the past.
The state audit.
Okay, all right, hold on to it for a minute. We're going to, I don't want to, I can't bring it up now because we're not at the agenda, but I want to move your item up so we don't keep you all here.
Appreciate it.
Of course. So that's where, I see, the Auditor General and the audit report. Okay, fine. Okay, so you're in the top of the order, so we'll get to you. We'll get to you relatively soon. Okay, fine. All right, so the approval of the minutes has a motion to all approve?
For the agenda?
No. For the agenda, I'm sorry, for the
Yes.
agenda. Thanks, Deborah. Okay, yes?
No problem.
Okay, that passes unanimously. Good. The minutes.
Motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor of that?
Aye.
Mr. Bennett, aye. That passes unanimously as well. Okay. We do have a section for public comments, so I don't know if anybody from transportation wants to say anything about the public comments. Okay, so I'm going to wait. As I said, I'm going to make sure we deal with this issue on the top so you don't have to sit around the whole meeting. Okay, so now we go right to audit reports. The first report is unannounced cash counts. So transportation, you get to listen in. One of the things we do, just so you understand, because some of you are new to our meetings, is the audit department, the Office of the Inspector General, they go to schools unannounced and check to make sure the money's where it's supposed to be. Because our committee, one of the things we're supposed to do here is keep out fraud, waste, and abuse. And underneath those categories is when someone takes money that's not theirs. So we not only audit every school every year to check not only the accounts with the funds in it, but there's about 25 different items we check at the schools. One of the things we do that we don't do every year, but whenever we think necessary or randomly, is we go to schools and check. So now you get to hear about that. Then I think we're going to get to your issue. So, Mr. Chu, who's going to present that?
Myself. Mr. Chair, before we proceed with the new report, I'd just like to mention that we do conduct unannounced visits for other programs. Transportation is one of those that we audit them, like the child safety.
Yes,
and
correct.
also the device in the buses. And then they first unannounced, we found out there were quite a lot of issues. Second unannounced, many of them were resolved. And the third, and then they get it all resolved. I'd like to give them credit for their diligence in correcting the deficiencies.
Okay, right. So I was just giving examples of non-transportation. So transportation isn't the only department that goes unannounced. We do that for all the departments, mostly the schools and other issues where, of course, where there's safety or cash concerns. Thank you, Mr. Chu, for clarifying. Now, what about the unaccounted cash?
We'd like to have Susie Cates today to present, and also with her is Randy Law, the audit director.
Oh, really? You need help, Susie? Is that what it is? Apparently. Please, present.
Good afternoon. We performed one of our periodic cash counts back on March 25th. You have the report in your agenda packet. We looked at a total of 6 schools, and as you could see, it was pretty good. The only money missing was $20 unaccounted for in one of the change funds. There was one school without any findings. The others, it was mostly minor findings. These schools were selected based on findings that were encountered during our fiscal year 18 internal accounts audits that our auditors came back and said, they'd like to go back to these schools.
Right.
So as far as the types of non-compliances, they're pretty much of the same typical nature we see of staff just slipped up on a particular procedure.
Okay. And obviously during the inspections, you let them know which they were, and the principals are aware of that.
All the principals responded. Their responses are in the report.
Right. Correct. I saw that. Very good. Okay. Thank you. Any questions from the committee? No? Okay.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
if I may add, we did an announced visit a few months ago before this audit. We also looked at 6 schools, and those had the football games, the big football games, the Friday before our site visit. We also found out there were no money missing. So
wow, that's
it's
good.
Again, I'd like to give credit to the staff and providing them with adequate trainings, and also the school employees are, again, they're working very hard to comply with all the rules.
That's good information to know. Thank you. Okay. Yes, I'm sorry.
My only comment is, and we keep on seeing this over and over, is about the drop safe and following those procedures. And I'm not sure what internally can be done to, I know have the training, you all, from your perspective, have
Their
done
perspective,
everything.
exactly.
But it's just we continuously see these drop safe procedures not being followed, and I don't know what you can do.
We've sent out the training again for the upcoming school year. We created, I think Ms. Samuels was at one of our previous meetings, highlighted a new report, this PFAC report, so it puts it right in front of the principal once a month, who has been trained and who has not.
All right, I don't know if the individuals that are not following the procedures maybe have to watch the training again and sign off on the training again, but that's your internal processes and how to, maybe try to continue mitigating that.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay. Motion to accept the report.
So moved.
Second? Okay, all in favor? Aye. Okay, that passes unanimously. Okay, we now have Auditor General Report, Operational Audit, Palm Beach County School District. Who's going to present that? Mr. Burke.
I will, Mr. Silver.
What a
Thank
pleasure.
You. Good
Please
to be
go
here.
right ahead.
It's matinee performance of the audit committee here.
Yes, sir.
On top of we have our Mr. Chu's, of course, our Inspector General here in Palm Beach County. We also have the Florida Auditor General, and they performed 3 major audits on a rotational basis. They're in every couple of years, but they do. What we're going to talk about today is the FY 2018 operational audit. They had also done an operational audit back in 2016. On top of the operational audit, they do a financial audit of our financial statements, including the single audit of any federal grant programs. And then they also have a team that comes out and does what they call the FTE audit, which is really focused on how we report our students and earn our funding from the state. We also have, of course, RSM here for our external financial audit, and we also get audited by the state and federal granting agencies. So we're pretty much audited all the time. We're in a constant state of audit nearly. But anyway, this audit, the operational audit, had 7 findings. There's, I can kind of run through them real quick if you like. We had a couple, in FY16 operational audit, they had focused on transportation quite a bit because we had some difficulties with the start of the school year, and there was a legislative outcry and demand for an audit. So that was a pretty thorough audit back in FY16. They've come back and followed up on that. There's been a lot of improvements made. But they did have two findings, and we've got all of our leadership here, from Ms. Paul to Shane Sturchwell and the transportation team. So if you guys want to dig in more to that, they're here to answer your questions. But they had a finding about the timelines for administering school bus driver discipline. And I know that can get complicated because there's some due process in there and some reviews and appeals and all that that do kind of extend that process. They also had, we have a call center that we've ramped up over the years to make sure phone calls are getting answered, and they had a finding related to if we receive those calls and there's a complaint or a concern, are we ensuring that there's follow through, and how does that complaint, how do we trace that back to the bus compound and make sure that the action was taken? So that was really the second finding. Finding number 3 deals with, we have the Educational Foundation, which in Palm Beach County here, we help offset some of the costs to run that foundation. The board pays $200,000 a year. In return, we get a lot of services out of them, and they help generate grant revenue and donations, and they administer some grants and make awards to our teachers and a whole a lot of good things. We have an MOU between the Ed Foundation and the school board, and we felt we were in pretty good. This has been a finding in other parts of the state. And the finding is basically questioning the board's authority to be able to pay this group as a non-direct support organization. And many years ago, we used to the staff for the Ed Foundation were part of the district, and they were district employees. We moved away from that a few years back, and that's where it turned. And rather than us paying their salary benefits, we started paying an annual dollar amount. This finding, we're going to continue to kind of challenge. We're going to respond. We've responded back. We've offered to enhance our MOU, our contract with the Ed Foundation, to make sure that those deliverables are clearly spelled out, and it's like any other contract. And we'll have to see how that goes. This will be something I'm sure they'll pick back up on in 2 years.
Mr. Burke, I assume you're supported by your staff, and not only your staff, but those above you and the superintendent, to push back on that?
Yes, sir.
Okay, good. So I just wanted to take that one piece because we don't talk about that a lot. We want to make sure you have the support you need. I don't know if anybody here from the committee has any objection with sort of pushing back from the state on that. But I think we are doing the right thing. I think you are handling it properly. If you need anything from us, from the committee, if you want any input from us, we're here for you. But we understand I understand what you're doing. If the committee has any questions on it, we fully support you on the way you're handling that professionally, but respectfully, you're disagreeing with them.
All right.
That's good.
Thank you.
Okay.
Findings 4 and 5 dealt with charter school closures. Some of these charter school closure findings are a little tough to swallow because many times when you get to that point where you're closing a charter school, the relationship has deteriorated somewhat, and they're not always cooperative, or they're not in good shape. So we have. This was related to not being able to get an audit, I believe, out of a charter school that had closed. And then the finding 5, the district did not always ensure the corrective action plans for charter schools were subject to the expedited review procedures. Let's see what we said to that. We pointed out that we've had review procedures in place for over 4 years, and that our charter school department felt pretty strong that they were doing everything they were able to do within the parameters of the law and with the powers they had. They have recommended, again, those 2 charter school ones are tough, and we went through this in the previous audit as well.
I remember. Ms. Nuss, do you have anything to add on that one, or what I suggest we do on those 2 is we have a replacement now that's running charter schools. Maybe we should have someone here to understand if they think they're lacking in anything, if they need any help. Otherwise, it's perfectly understandable what the state's saying there, but they're asking for something that I think is almost unreasonable. So
Right.
I'd like to understand that.
What I can add is that we did meet the timelines. The Florida statute has very specific prescriptive guidelines as to when we need to communicate and notify the charter school boards of when they meet the conditions of deteriorating financial condition. So we were able to do that. We always met that requirement of notifying them within 7 days. There's also another requirement that after we provide that notification, that we need to have a corrective action plan submitted to the Department of Education within 30 days. We have some issues there with having the charter schools be cooperative in developing that corrective action plan, and so it wasn't always submitted to DOE timely.
And it can't be done unilaterally.
Correct. And so there is some guidance within the statute to say if we cannot come to an agreement with the charter schools, then we can request support from the Department of Education and have them actually provide the details of the plan. DOE has not been willing to take that extra step, but we did add into our procedures that if we don't have a plan within 30 days, we automatically reach out to DOE and we request that they step in and they develop the components of the plan. And so I have taken that approach with our most recent corrective action plan. The response I received back was, well, we don't think you're at the point yet of needing our assistance, so please keep working with the charter school. But at least we have that communication from the Department of Education, so it will keep us in compliance with, hopefully, with the next audit when they come out to review.
Right. Again, similar to the other finding, I'm not that concerned about this coming up with having that finding. I don't know if anybody from the committee is, because we're sort of in a catch-22 there. And I'd rather not go to the state. I'd rather either work it out or locally, because we know what the issues are, and to go to that level is only going to compound the problem. And in my opinion, at the end of the day, the children are going to be the ping pong balls here. So I'd rather not do it and try and handle it locally. So again, unless anybody from the committee feels otherwise, I think I support you in having that finding and continuing with the procedure. And again, who's running charter now?
Mr. Joe DiPasquale.
That's right, Joe D. You're right. So if he wants to come and talk and has any issues, the committee would be happy to sit and listen to that at any time. You could relay that message to him. We're there.
Okay. And Ms. Canusa is going to report later on our charter school financial reviews. The sixth finding dealt with adult and community education. This is a repeat finding, and it deals with accurately reporting the instructional hours of our adult students. I believe some progress has been made. I think, Mr. Chu, your department has followed up and done our own local audit into adult ed, but we did get cited again. That department is under relatively new leadership, and I know they understand the importance of this, and are working to eliminate the finding going forward. District 7 was an IT security controls finding where they had some additional recommendations to strengthen our controls, and those were implemented back in January, so that's been kind of taken care of. So that's really the 7 findings,
Okay,
Mr. Chair.
I appreciate it. Does transportation want to bring up any feedback or comments on your specific findings? Is that why you're here?
Sure. As I said previously at our last audit meeting, we're a work in progress, but if my team would stand up, all the transportation folks here. Okay, I guess nobody in transportation is working there because they're all here. This is my leadership here, and these are the people that are going to solve these 2 findings. Part of it is attention to detail. Part of it is understanding that, yes, we do have to take a time out and do these things and document our drivers and give them coaching and counseling so that we can get better. But I assure you that we are working towards that objective. These group of people behind me, they work really hard to make sure we're doing the right things for kids every day. And they're passionate about what they do. So, again, I have no dispute in terms of the findings because it is what it is, but we will continually improve on these things, especially safety-related things. Those are non-negotiables.
Thank you. Yes.
As I read this, I appreciate the
management. You guys can sit down. Thank you.
Read the findings and appreciate management's responses in there. My only comment is I think that we discuss at least the portion of the accident, the time frames with that a few months ago. So I'm wondering on the findings, the management's response, if we can have a time frame or maybe look at this in another month, what time frame are you looking at to try to get these?
So ideally, you know, when I read the findings and I looked at the variance between the low, the mid, and the high in terms of the response from the VARC actually meeting, and in terms of the process for getting out to Shane and getting out to the different areas or our facilities and getting to that direct manager over that driver. What I'm looking at is kind of how do we close that loop? So some of the comments and some of the findings were, yes, conversations were had. We do have a documentation or a process of reporting that in Tri-Riga. But, I just think that we need to look at and see if that's the correct, do we have the correct process in place to send out alerts to tell us that the loop or the loop is closed on a particular incident. So, again, we have many players in this process. It starts with being presented to VARC. It starts with VARC making a ruling, VARC meeting, and then the person over VARC making a ruling, to the communication to the director, to the individual facility, to the individual manager, to the person, and then back up again. So again, I just want to look at that process and see if there are any ways that we can kind of trim that timeline. I'm looking at 30 days from when VARC meets. And there are times that VARC is not able to meet, i.e. maybe in the summer and so forth, and perhaps over Christmas and those kind of things. So I think we need to kind of look in more depth at this process and see, again, how we can shorten that timeline to get to the driver.
Okay. And then on the other finding, which is just closing the loop on recording, I guess, or just the follow-through on some of those communications. So how long do you think that it'll take to get that policy completed?
Or the process completed? Yes. So, again, I need to look at what the obstacles are. Sometimes we have drivers that are out sick. Sometimes, there are life situations that happen. So I need to look at specific examples and follow through there with my team to make sure that we provide a timeline that's realistic. So I think we still have work to do on this. I know that the team, we need to truly, as it says, improve the process of documentation. And
I may not be, whenever I ask my question, I may not be, and I don't mean that you have to tell us a time, but I was talking about the policy itself, like how long will it take you under the recommendations? It has 3 recommendations under finding 2. So how long do you think it would take for you to establish a timeline? How long to require records documenting those policies so that we can say, okay, it's going to be 30 days. So at the end of 30 days, will you provide us a report so we can just,
Right.
That's what I'm looking for. It's just that a policy has been done that outlines all these time frames that you're talking about.
So I would say the first objective I have is opening schools. So
really?
to make sure that we open schools. But I would love to be able to get back with you perhaps in September timeframe, if that's appropriate, once we've done a review and looked at it in depth.
Okay, so
you can give us an answer
in September, maybe to have a report and just
right. And you don't need a comment. Just let us know.
Okay.
What you're thinking at that time, so we know when the policy could be in place.
Okay.
So we're doing it to follow up.
Okay.
I appreciate it. Thank you, Ms. Manzani. I want to recognize that Ms. McDonald and Mr. Williamson are here from the Audit Committee. Welcome. Any other questions from the committee for transportation? Okay. I just want to be clear. I think it's very good to have your key leadership be here, and thank you very much for being here and taking this seriously. I just want to be clear from the committee's point of view. My discussion with Mr. Burke, when we did have some findings for the state, and I think you perfectly understand it, but I just want to make sure I say it overtly so there's no misinterpretation. Some of the findings from the state we may not agree with because there might be some inconsistencies there, something like that. I think transportation agrees and we agree that your findings are something that we take seriously. You take it obviously seriously enough to bring a lot of your people here, which is very important, and we appreciate that, and we'll continue to it. Hopefully these findings will diminish, go away completely. You will have the policy in place, and it won't happen. So I appreciate what you're doing. I just didn't want to make any misunderstanding because Mr. Burke and I obviously discussed some of them that we take seriously, but not to the level that the state does, and for the various reasons we discussed. But I want to thank you very much for being here, for everybody for being here.
Well, thank you, and I thank you for your patience as we work on improving transportation. It's a big elephant to try to eat all at one time, so we're taking chunks, and these kind of evaluations and audits really truly helps us get better. So I appreciate the effort.
Sure. The analogy I use is a battleship and trying to move that around with all the people involved, but absolutely correct. Thank you.
Mr. Silver,
yes.
Can I add one other thing?
Oh, please. Ms. McDonald.
We talked about this a few audit committees ago. So when you do come back with an update on the policy, if you would include if there are any differences in findings between the state and our school district audit report, if there are things that still need to be addressed and that are outstanding that are different than this report, if you could include them all and we can incorporate everything in one fell swoop, so to speak.
Well, that would make sense, right, because I'm much more familiar with the financial than the transportation. That makes sense. Good suggestion.
Okay, thank you.
Good. Okay, any other questions? Okay, so we're going to accept, thank you, transportation. We're going to accept Mr. Burke's report as well. Is there a motion for that?
Motion to accept.
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, that passes unanimously. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Burke. Thank you, transportation. We're going to move on to next event. Mr. Chu, you messed up my agenda there. I think it's something to do with the OIG, yes? Overview OIG activities.
Yes.
Since 2012. Is this a history lesson we're going to get here, Mr. Chu? What's going on here?
Oh, I call it overview. Well, as of today, the OIG has been coming into being for almost 7.5 years, and then I think this is time for us to give a very brief recollection of what OIG has done for the last 7.5 years. So with me, I brought a copy of all our annual reports that we have prepare and also semi-annual, and thanks to Ms. Liz McBride that she put all them together. I think it's good that the recollection of this will give us some idea of what we had done so far and looking forward what we could be missing in the future. And this quick presentation before the audit and investigation directors are coming up to give you a quick presentation, I kind of mix it a little bit because I see this as a, what do you call that, not as consistent in the original. So this is the, there we go. Okay, these are the policies that was created by the school board. Number 1, 11091, 11092, these are the backbone of our structure, responsibility, and also obligations. And all the rest are also affecting and providing the rules that we're supposed to follow. So, 6 policies are affecting us. And then to have all these requirements, there must be objectives, of course, to promote transparency, fiscal responsibility, accountability, value added, and also to program efficiency, effective program result, and compliance. So compliance becomes a very critical issue for the school district that we have seen quite a lot of penalty imposed by the state for failure to comply with the rules. These are the resources that we have received in terms of the staff and fiscal, the budget. And then thanks to Mr. Bennett, he pointed out before the meeting that you see that our staff auditors even went down from before our inception. It stays at 10 auditors all along. And then investigators also stayed pretty much the same until 2017 when they add on an intake coordinator. So our staffing has been very constant. without increase. And then Mr. Bennett was nice enough to point out that when his firm did our internal funds audit, we have about 140, 150 schools, and now we have 175 plus the charter school and other responsibility. But our staffing remains pretty constant throughout the last 7.5 years. So.
You didn't have any charter schools back then either.
Correct. Yep. Yep. Okay. With that resources, we organized the OIG into 3 major units: audit, investigation, and compliance. So and also we get legal, Ms. Bright, and also my assistant, Ms. Joyce. And this is from the appendix in the handout. So you're able to see over the last 7.5 years that how many findings that we able to produce and number of recommendations, which is substantial. You see at the very end that we have total and also average, and also the fiscal impact. So talk about investigative functions. These are the average per year and also in total for the lab since fiscal year 2014 through 2019. We did a quick research, try to compare our shop with our neighboring local OIG. The first one on the very left-hand corner is the Miami-Dade Public School, the OIG, which has been outsourced to the county OIG. And then let me see. The second column is the Palm Beach County OIG. Third is Broward. The fourth one is us. So staffing-wise, we are pretty comparable to Miami-Dade, the OIG for their school operation. 6 employees, and then 6 for Palm Beach County. We have 5. And but if you see the number of reports published at the bottom row, so you see that there's a big discrepancy there that during the same period, we produced 88 compared to the other about 20 to 30.
You didn't do the division, Mr. Chu. You didn't say cost per report. Those accountants like to say.
And that's
just to be clear, this is just the investigative, the 5 employees at the district.
Correct.
Correct? Miami-Dade is 6 employees doing this function. Yeah. Palm Beach County is 6 employees doing it. Broward County is 13. Yeah. Just the investigative portion of the 3 functions you laid out.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes. So because of the lack of adequate resources to produce, to meet the demand, this year we have looked into the budget request so that we could meet all the requirements. Sorry for the small print in here. The first one is the senior auditor to audit project funded by sales tax referendum. It's a huge project. I think we're talking about $140 million just for the referendum money per year. So over 10 years is $1.4 billion. And also the ongoing projects is another, I believe, another few $100 million, I'm sure. Well, we need to do more work because right now we spend a lot of time doing other observation and monitoring, and we are also, of course, doing audit. But I think adding one will beef up the program, and that was actually the idea coming from our chairman Barbieri many meetings ago. So we finally put it into the request. The second one we are looking for is an investigator to help out the investigative projects. Later on, you're going to see the overwhelming incoming of the cases, but we need another person to help out this unit. And the third one is a financial analyst. This person will be providing the overall analysis for the financial data for the school district, doing the database analytics, doing, of course, most likely doing the working paper digitizing, and also that we want to see the trend analysis. This person will be helping our auditors, investigators to provide some kind of background information. And sometimes you could pretty much identify the areas and narrow the scope for our internal funds audit and the regular audit, because this person should be able to tell you, to define the scope so that we don't have to look around. And then thanks to Mr. Bennett, he had been providing us a lot of those data analytics skill training for us. And I see that it takes additional time for my existing auditors that we need help.
So number one, you want Mr. Bennett to chip in part of the 79,000. I got that. Number two, I think what you're saying is, let me say it in more layman terms, is you have auditors that are professionals at doing audits. However, the process to begin the audit and when the audit is concluded for the presentation of that audit, both of those areas, if they have someone that's a professional in that area, the auditors can spend more time actually doing their job, which is the audit. This person will be doing the compilation, the comparison, any other work regarding the scope. And what's more and more important today is the presentation and the compilation of all these audits so we can get the information we need and use it in a format so management can use this information to make the district better. Is that another way of putting it? Mr. Bennett, you agree with that?
Yeah, I think there's another facet maybe you didn't touch on, and that is, if you go back to when we were young auditors, young CPAs, a long time ago, right? But
yes, sir.
Back in those days, the old random sample, you pull out the random number table and go pull them. Where the state of the art is now is you use analytics, sometimes called digital forensics or data analysis or whatever, to zero in on the areas that have a higher risk, and you only sample those areas. So you got a much greater likelihood of finding anything if it is wrong, and you can expend a lot less effort to get to the same place ultimately. So that's where the auditing profession is going now,
right.
And that's another aspect that he's talking about here. I've been lobbying for this ever since I've
right.
been
So we'll get that expertise in-house.
Obviously, I support this.
Okay. Well, I wanted to make sure you did, because you're coming to the board meeting if they have any questions, Mr. Barbieri, so you can explain it. Very good. Okay. Very good. Any questions on this page here and what Mr. Chu's department's asking for? Okay.
Mr. Chairman, this was supposed to be the second part of the presentation, budget request, but since this is part of the big picture.
Oh, we're jumping ahead.
Yeah. So I would like to get the support from the committee.
Well, that's what I'm asking for right now. Nobody's saying, everybody's shaking their head yes. You got our support.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Do we need to vote on it or something? No.
Well, it may be later,
like?
yeah.
I move that we support and
budget request, yeah.
Your budget request for 3 additional staff.
There you go. That's 5.2. Is there a second for that motion?
Second.
Everybody for it? Any against it?
All for it.
Oh, wait, I'm sorry. Wait. We have a non-voting member against it. I can't imagine.
I get to vote.
Oh, did I miss something? Was there a contribution coming in there?
No, yeah, that's right. Mr. Burke, this isn't a zero-sum game here.
That was a joke.
This is not coming from Ms. News Department or your department.
He prepared this schedule for us, Mr. Chairman.
I understand. Okay, so they'll let the record show that it passes unanimously.
And this is a new org chart. If we had the 3 new persons, will be construction audit, and then the middle one is investigation, and then audit.
We can't call it a Bennett something or other, so when he gives his contribution, he gets credit for it.
I don't need any credit.
Okay, I think that pretty much conclude my overall section. I'd like to have Randy Law to talk about audit very quickly. I told them that you only have 5 minutes.
Yeah, I want Randy to present it as well.
Oscar is going to cover the investigation. Yeah.
Right. And before Randy starts, let me just give a small piece of background information for the committee and why this is being done today. There has been some talk in the district about the office of the OIG and possibly looking at other districts, other places around the country, and if there's any alternatives to our current organization. I've been through this for many years. I've been through it again for the last few months now with Mr. Chu, and I think the system that we have should only be refined and improved, similar to what we just voted on today, with the committee's help to continue to improve it. But the suggestion to me does not make sense to try and change the organization in any dramatic way, and it's based on not ego or anything else. It's based on the facts and the circumstances that Mr. Chu and his people are going to present now. So that's why Mr. Chu, that's why they're presenting it. Yes, Ms. Manson.
Question. In that last item we just discussed, 5.2, there's some attachments, and the analysis of activity between local OIG offices is different than what you put on the screen by quite a bit. I was wondering.
We have some typos in there, and then because some of the frames were prepared a while back, so I try to get the most more.
Yeah, what he said was he put on the board the latest
current
ones, and this is
Okay,
older.
can I get that latest
Yes.
one? Okay, just that one page, okay.
We will send you the more current one when it's getting ready.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll do that.
Good,
Yes.
good point.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Mr. Law.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon. I'm going to give you a quick overview of the audit function and activities for the past 7 years, from fiscal year 2013 through 2019. Recently, the state passed a law that requires school districts who receive the state, federal, or local funds in excess of $500 million every year to hire internal auditors. This slide shows some of the major statutory responsibilities for the internal auditors. Basically, our office are complying with it and perform all of them except the first item, which is a comprehensive district-wide risk assessment. Even though we do perform the risk assessment on a per-project basis, and now we have included a comprehensive risk assessment project in our current year's proposed work plan. This table summarizes, like Mr. Chu already presented, this table summarizes what we have completed in the past 7 years. In average, we completed about 186 audits per year, which includes 175 school audits and 11 performance audits and special requests. We also completed about 5 special requests from district staff, state attorneys, etc., that do not result in written reports. Of those audits we completed, we produced about 681 audit findings, 839 recommendations, and with a total estimated total fiscal impact of about $2 million per year. For the school audits, which is required by the state law, in addition to doing the financial and compliance, financial accuracy and compliance audit, we also look into the student safety and also the district's insurance liability protection. For student safety, we look at the background check for consultants and vendors, the student registration and dismissal procedures for some critical system program, like after-school program or safe school programs. The insurance requirement is we look at the adequate proof of liability insurance provided by the lessees who are using district facilities, and the consultants and vendors who come to perform services on school campuses. We constantly work with district staff in developing procedures to improve internal controls and compliance. And Accounting Services Department provides a lot of trainings and supports to school staff. That results in quite a good improvement in the school audit's results. You can see the number of schools with no findings increased from 22 schools in 2012 to 47 schools in 2018. At the same time, the number of total number of audit findings for all the schools also decreased from 568 findings in 2012 down to 451 in 2018. In terms of our performance audits, we cover various areas for our performance audits. Here's a quick summary and grouping of the areas we covered. We cover student learnings, we cover operational efficiencies and effectiveness. We also look into the money missing and fraud cases. And we work closely with our school police for those fraud cases and also the state attorney's offices. I think that concludes my part. I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Restrepo for the investigation.
Good afternoon. My name is Oscar Restrepo. I am the director of the OIG Investigations Unit. It is my honor to lead a group of highly educated, talented, and hardworking professionals within the unit that are dedicated to the school district and the mission of the work. The OID Investigations Unit enhances public trust by initiating investigations designed to detect, deter, prevent, and eradicate fraud, waste, financial mismanagement, misconduct, and other abuses. You've seen this slide once before, but it is my pleasure to kind of give you a snapshot of what we're doing. The left column, as you see, that is a total from 2014 to 2019. In the right column, we break it down per year. So we're, on average, taking 146 complaints, initiating 43 investigations, inquiries, referring and monitoring 103 of the complaints, and issuing an average of 15 reports per year. And then the financial impact, obviously, is there on the bottom. The OID receives our complaints from many sources. The district's hotline was instituted in March of 2013. The hotline provides access 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, and offers employees the ability to file complaints anonymously, which promotes trust for employees. School district employees are generally the primary reporting parties. However, parents and other members of the public have contributed to providing allegations. As it's plain to see from the pie chart, 70% of all complaints coming into the ID's office is coming through the hotline.
Oscar,
Yes,
question. When you say the hotline, is it phone or is it the phone and email?
It's phone. That's the hotline is strictly phone.
I thought there was an email, anonymous.
It all comes through the same process through Ethical
Right.
Advocate.
Right.
So they can email to Ethical Advocate, but we still categorize it as a hotline complaint because the hotline forwards it to us.
That's fine. Okay, so
Okay.
that's the system that we put. That came online how many years ago?
March of 2013.
So 13 is when we approved that. So
Correct.
we haven't heard anything from it except that it's working.
It's
But
working,
You're
yes.
working all the time. Is there any recommendations or comments you have on it? Since that's the main flow of information.
That is the main flow.
You picked that one vendor from many vendors. Have you heard anything or seen anything that you want to bring up maybe in the future about it, or you're comfortable with who we're using?
No, we're very comfortable with it. I think it provides a great avenue for staff and employees to provide us with allegations, information.
And all of our units, the schools, transport, all the other units have signage there so people there know how to go if they need to use that hotline?
Yes, sir. We've pretty much put posters throughout everywhere, and we can double check and make sure that they haven't been taken down. But my understanding is that, yeah, every department has signage with our 800 number.
And you're satisfied with the vendor we're using?
At this point, yes.
So didn't we have a contract for so many years?
Yeah, ever since we started.
Right.
Yes, I think it's a conversation I want to have with the vendor about maybe capturing a little more specific information than what we're getting, because on some of the complaints, we don't get enough information, and it takes man hours to then go out and get the additional information that could be captured by the hotline. But that's something that we can deal with the hotline on our own.
Okay, and if you need to, you have legal, we're allowed to ask. And I mean, we don't want to turn people away, but we want to make your job as efficient as possible, because obviously you weed out a lot of the complaints right away. So it would help you weed it out, but we don't want to chase away the legitimate complaints.
I appreciate it.
So just to
Yes, ma'am.
clarify,
Yes.
the complaints are coming from school district employees, parents, and the public?
And the public.
Anybody.
Contractors, anybody.
And then
That's why there should be posters anywhere that they're in touch with the district. There should be some in the offices here. So if anybody sees any fraud, waste, or abuse or a problem, an employee, a parent, a child, vendor.
But also our policy requires the IG's office and the hotline information to be on our home web page.
Right.
Which it is. So.
Well, it's seamless. That's what's good about it. It
Right.
eventually gets posted on there. So we had nothing before this except literally people knocking on doors or calling, in a muffled voice. So you're telling me the system works well, which is good to hear.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And is it an annual renewal that we do with them? Or?
Mr. Chairman, I think the contract lasts about three years.
Right, so I
and
figured.
then it had gone down from 30-some thousand per year to like 15 or 17 per year.
All right, so the cost is a negligible amount. It makes sense. Okay, good. I'm glad it's working. Sorry for the interruption.
And also,
Yes.
I want to point out that the research shows that the use of hotline would demonstrate the trust of the public on the entity. So if we have 70, that means people calling us through the hotline. So that means they trust us. They believe in us.
Well, that's my point. That's why I wanted to make sure that it was there, it's viable, it's working well. Of course, you can't prove a negative, but I won't go there. But go ahead, Mr.
Okay, thank you. The next slide will show you a breakdown of the complaint intakes through the hotline and other sources over the last 6 fiscal years. So we'll see that the bulk of the complaints that are coming through the hotline. Of the 874 complaints that we've processed in that time period, 611 have been through the hotline.
Right.
So it is obviously working very well.
Good.
Okay, and this is basically, we broke this down as how does this affect our students, how does it affect our schools? And we broke it down by elementary schools, middle schools, high schools, alternative and charter schools as to how many complaints are directly related to our students and our schools. And what this shows you that 79.3% of the complaints were directly related to the schools, and the other 20% were related to other district departments. But the bulk of the complaints we are taking are affecting our schools and our
So it goes
students.
to your question, Ms. McDonald, right? About where, yeah. Okay, very good.
I'm just curious, I don't know if you do an analysis to try to see why, for example, in 2019, you had an increase in the at the elementary school level, and, you know, where the numbers go up really high. I don't know if there's any trends or anything that you can relate those increases to or not.
I have not done a trend analysis, but we can probably take a look and see what we're dealing with and why that may have occurred. I do
That's
know
why
we had a
need
couple.
that financial analyst to.
Right, yeah. It could very well be, it could very well be, no disrespect, it could be a new principal or a new teacher at one school, and the parents are saying, what the heck is going on here? Our kids have to do what? So you never know.
And
You
that
never
does
know.
happen.
Yeah, I know, I'm sure it does, and as you can see, a significant portion don't go anywhere. So
Or it's possible.
we take them seriously, but at the same time, they could just be noise.
Could be a graduating from middle schools, and then the next year they're in the high school. And
Oh, there you go.
they're
Yeah,
taking
that's
it
what
with
it
them.
is, yeah. Yeah, we're following. Yeah, you're following. If you go by parent, you'll see.
May I have a comment?
Go ahead, I'm sorry. Yes. Yes.
One comment I think we should add is the hotline has been just a valuable tool, not just for our office and its function, but for the district. Many of the complaints, they come there because they are answered by a third party. And many of them, we also have to refer out to the relevant units to address.
Right, district departments.
It just gives an overall value to the district as a whole, I think.
That's right. So make sure you allocate that $15,000, Mr. Brook.
Trying to save some money for Mr. Katz over here, you know.
Okay, and the next one, this one actually shows the investigations and inquiries that were opened and how they directly affected the school and the students, where again, the percentage of 71.8% of the inquiries were directly related to the schools. It shows the impact we're having on our schools and our students, and hopefully making things better for the students and the schools.
Good.
You see the elementary school open actually last. You see that only 4.
Right.
Yeah, I saw that. I was looking at the comparison as well as the one for the alternative ed schools. It was off the chart in 2016, and there were very few. There was only 7 investigations open, so I see.
Right. As I said,
Just because.
change. Some people don't like change.
And this slide will show you a wide array of different investigations or allegations that we've investigated in the 88 reports that we've issued since 2014. It's comprised of 269 allegations that were investigated, with a wide range from, financial mismanagement, misconduct, to tobacco use on our school district property. But the bottom line is the bulk of it is fraud, waste, abuse, which is what our mandate is.
And back to Ms. McBride's point, it's district-wide. It's not just the schools. It's not just, it's everything. The hotline is a funnel for all anything people see, which is good.
And then finally, the OID investigations unit is only one of 35 offices of Inspector General that have been accredited through Law Enforcement Accreditation. We had our actual ceremony on the 26th of June. On the left, you see there Mr. Chu smiling happily with the plaque. Also pictured is myself, Senior Investigator Veronica Valicelo, and our intake coordinator with the Executive Director and the Chair of the Commission. And on the right, Mr. Chu is... he smiled heavily when he did this. He was very happy to put his patch.
Oh, he has the plaque here. What a coincidence. Look at this.
There's a plaque.
Let's pass it around. And why don't you autograph it, and we'll pass it around.
Congratulations, you all. That's wonderful.
So on the right, he's putting our patch along with the rest of the professional agencies that have been accredited through the Commission. So with that, I'll take any questions, and I appreciate the opportunity to do our presentation.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, and also I think we give a letter of congratulations that came with the frame, And then also that I'd like to point out that I think we give it to you already about the peer review that we successfully passed.
Yes.
And then we have attached it in the handout, but I still like to, among all the good comments they cited, not cited, they said about us, I'd like to read this. I think this is important here. I was very impressed by this comment. They said that Palm Beach County School District, OIG, has the professional decorum required for any agency that has transitioned from primary and audit operation into a IG office. The scope of your office jurisdiction over one of the largest school districts in the nation and limited size makes it apparent that your agency can perform nationally.
Oh. So what are you going to take?
So we could find jobs elsewhere easily.
Very good.
So I think this is a very good comment.
Thank you.
Very kind. And then among other, I think I tapped many. I don't want to read them all, but you can read it. I think it was a very fruitful process. And then the reviewers said that they had picked up something from us also, as much as we pick up from them.
Yeah, I got that same comment. Thank you. Thank you. Any questions for investigations? Mr. Bliss?
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Bob Bliss. I'm the Officer of Compliance and Quality Assurance in the office. And one of the key responsibilities of my position is to ensure that our audits and investigations comply with professional standards. When we perform audits, we follow government auditing standards, which are published by the United States Government Accountability Office. And when we conduct investigations, we follow principles and standards for offices of Inspector General, which are published by the Association of Inspectors General. Both sets of these standards require us to have a quality assurance program, which assesses compliance with the standards, as well as with our own internal policies and procedures. Following professional standards is really important because it ensures the quality of our work and that accurate and objective information is consistently provided to the school board, the superintendent, and the audit committee, information that can be relied upon in their decision making. The Compliance and Quality Assurance Unit is also provides direct support to Mr. Chu in some of his responsibilities in carrying out sections of school board policies, including following up on prior audit recommendations and contract oversight. One of the ways we ensure compliance with standards is by independently reviewing the detailed audit work papers and investigative case files after each project is completed. We do this review annually, and recommendations are made to correct any deficiencies or compliance issues that may be noted. Some other things we do to ensure the quality of our work: we independently review all audit and investigation draft reports and final reports before we publish them or send them for a response. We periodically update our policies and procedures manuals. We ensure all our staff obtain the required continuing professional education, and we make sure we implement our peer review recommendations. And these efforts, as Mr. Chu pointed out, have paid off. We've been peer reviewed 3 times since 2013, and we successfully passed every one, concluding that we complied with all the professional standards. The next thing that our unit is responsible for is following up on prior audit recommendations. Since fiscal year 2013, our office has followed up on over 5,000 recommendations.
5,000?
Most of those were school audits.
Right.
6 months after the issue date of the audit report, we request status reports from the department directors and determine if corrective actions were adequately implemented by staff. These follow-up activities strengthen accountability and ensure the benefits of auditing are fully realized. The Compliance and Quality Assurance Unit is also responsible for certain aspects of contract oversight. We regularly attend contract selection committee meetings and contract negotiation meetings. And this activity helps promote honesty, integrity, transparency, and compliance during the procurement process. Since fiscal year 2016, we've attended over 50 of these meetings, and that involved more than $50 million worth of contracts. I'm sorry, $500 million worth of contracts. Big difference. Other meetings we regularly attend are the Construction Oversight and Review Committee meetings. And at those meetings, topics such as architects, engineers, and contractor selection for the contract language, and the cost monitoring procedures for construction costs. We also attend the Independent Sales Surtax Oversight Committee meetings, which oversees the use of the 1% sales surtax. The last thing I'd like to point out, we also perform special projects that are not considered audits or investigations, but they assist staff and benefit the district. For example, we recently analyzed school impact fees. We learned that Palm Beach County's impact fees were among the lowest in the state. We informed the board chair of this, who I believe was successfully able to address the issue with the county commission, because coincidentally, the county commission recently approved an increase in school impact fees effective August 1st of this year, more than doubling the current fees on a single-family home, and more than tripling the current fees effective August 1st of next year. In another example, we recently monitored actions taken by staff to correct recurring air condition failures at a high school until staff was able to successfully resolve those issues. One of our next projects coming up will be to conduct a comprehensive risk assessment of the district, which will include all areas of operation. And that's all I'd like to point out for the compliance and quality assurance section. And I'll turn it back over to the chair.
Thank you, Mr. Bush. Any questions for Mr. Bush?
I have a question.
Yes, Ms. Dunn.
You indicated that you have, since 2016, your department has attended 50 of the contract negotiation meetings. In that process, it represented $500,000. I was just wondering what percentage is that, what percentage is the 50 of the total population of meetings that have been held? Do you have any idea? Like,
no.
How do you pick the ones you're going to attend?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, we pick the ones. Everything we do is risk based, so we try to pick the ones that are higher dollar amounts or risky types of contracts. Because of the controversy in the past with the penny sales tax, so that's not the amount of the school district, but because of that. That contribution with the public and so forth. Is there more of an effort or a focus on attending those meetings? I'm glad you asked, because yes, the answer is yes. We have been focusing on construction contract selection meetings. Of course, those are the bigger dollar ones, so naturally we tend to go to those. But yeah, we focus on the 1% sales tax use when we go to these meetings. We make that the priority.
So if the board approves the increase of staff, there'll be another person able to attend these meetings?
Or do the audits, identified after attending the meeting, right. There could be areas that we need to
well, there'll be follow-up on audits, but what about attending the meetings in the first place?
We have been doing that.
Right, I understand.
Yeah, we'll have another person available.
Another person available.
Yes.
Who's designated for
right,
construction.
Exactly. Yeah. Good, okay.
Good
question. Thank you.
Anything else? Thank you, Mr. Bliss.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chu. I like having your people here.
I think that
they've done very impressive.
Pretty much concluded it. I mean, not to try to brag on we have been doing a good job, but I think the peer review team and accreditation report will speak for our performance.
I think so.
May I make a comment? I think
yes.
On behalf of the committee, and that would be Mr. Chu. I think you should be commended and congratulated for the high level of excellence that you brought to the audit committee for the Palm Beach County School District. Thank you.
He and the staff.
And staff.
I cannot do it without my staff.
Yeah.
So they
actually. I second that. If you can't do it,
they work much harder than me.
The team. I thank you very much, Mr. Young. I agree. Okay.
And also for staff, I think Mike Burke has been very supporting. All our work and
sometimes
give us some money sometimes. So. He approved our request for budget exemption a lot, so we appreciate that.
Okay, so we did
that request is in the budget that's going to the board they'll take their first vote on the budget July 31st.
Well, good, just in time. Okay, so we did 5-2. Can we go on to charter schools and Heather, Ms. Newst? Yes.
Good job, guys.
Yes, if you're. Yeah.
Yes.
So I was requested to bring an overview of the charter school fiscal oversight and financial condition on the charter schools. I just wanted to start with the role of my department is primarily responsible for the district budget, but I also oversee the fiscal compliance of the approximately 50 charter schools that we have. I have 2 staff that are dedicated to that financial review and oversight. We work very closely with the legal department as well as with the charter department. So my department is responsible for the fiscal aspects and oversight of each of the charter schools. And so with the attachment, I do apologize that the font is a little small, but we were trying to get as much information on there as possible. It provides an overview of the charter school financial condition, as well as the charter school fiscal compliance, because I do look at it in...
Can you put it up on the screen?
It's coming, they're trying now. You're not going to like it when you see it. It's coming.
Not going to be a whole lot different.
Right, there you go. There you go. Are you happy now?
Yes, quite happy.
Can you pass this around like Mr. Chu passed it around?
You have it in your handout, but they're not color.
Right.
Yeah.
They're not.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so there are two parts of the report. The first part is the charter school financial condition, and the second section of the report, you can see on the right-hand side, is the charter school fiscal compliance. So the charter school financial condition is based on looking at their fund balance, looking at enrollment, and looking at the financial pieces of each of the charter schools. The financial fiscal compliance is looking at more the compliance-based functions. Were they complying with federal and state guidelines? Were they complying with our charter school benchmarks, submitting their financial statements on time? Were those financial statements, when they submitted them on time, were they accurate and complete? So we have two different categories when you're looking at the compliance, and then they're color-coded. So the ones that are green are ones that we don't have any issues, whether it's charter school financial condition or whether it's under compliance. Those that are yellow are ones that we're monitoring. It doesn't necessarily mean, like for that very first one, Academy for Positive Learning, financially they're strong. They do comply with all their fiscal compliance, but there have been some recent articles in the newspaper about this school that they had to remove some portables off of their school site, and that can impact potentially their enrollment. So that's why we have them as yellow, because we're monitoring them, because if they're not able to maintain their enrollment, that is definitely going to impact their financial condition. So those that are red are ones that are either in deteriorating financial condition, or we have significant fiscal compliance issues with them. So we do have 4 schools that are in deteriorating financial condition. One is Siegel Academy. They were placed under a corrective action plan in August of 2018. That corrective action plan will be completed in August of 2019. They have performed very well. Their fund balance is now positive, so we don't foresee extending that corrective action plan. Toussaint has been under a corrective action plan for the past 2 years, and it's going to continue for another year. And theirs is mainly due to enrollment. They are making improvements, but just slowly. You know, they're slowly starting to increase their enrollment. They only have about 100 students. So when you have a school that's that small, it's very dependent on, you know, a reduction of 10 students can have a significant impact to them. Then we have Bright Futures and G-Star. Both of those are under a new corrective action plan, and their corrective action plans have actually not been approved by the Florida Department of Education. And we're going through that process right now and working with DOE and the school in order to get those finalized.
When you say they haven't been approved, you mean it's in process, or they were rejected and you're going itinerary trying to change
They're
it?
in process. So we've submitted G-Star Academy, and then just this past week, the legal department actually forwarded some information saying that they are now in talks with Charter School USA to take over their school. And so that will significantly impact the corrective action plan that was submitted to us, because the one that was submitted to us with their budget, it doesn't include any of the management fees for Charter USA. But what also comes with Charter USA is most likely they're going to be, they'll be able to provide a letter to say they're going to cover any shortfalls that the school may encounter. And so by doing that, that will help to bring them out of a deteriorating financial condition.
Is there a column that we don't see here that shows who the sponsors of the schools are? In other words, how many are Charter USA schools versus how many are independent and are all conglomerated? I don't know if that's relevant or all, but it might be.
It is. It's not relevant for one of the set of schools. It is relevant for Academica. because we did have some issues that we encountered with federal grants on 2 of the academic managed schools. And as a result of the issues that were identified, we then placed every academic managed school as high risk because they do have the same internal control structure.
Right.
So to ensure that we are passing through the federal grant reimbursement requests and that the school is following all requirements, we placed all the additional supporting documentation requirements on all academic and managed schools.
And since we had a little interjection here, if you don't mind, because I don't have a full understanding of charter school operations. I don't, my understanding is, or what I know is that funds go directly to the charter school and per student instead of going to the schools. But
instead of coming to the district.
Right, but how do they have to report? I don't understand how they report to the school district because I thought there's state laws out there that govern them. So I'm just trying to understand as you're going through this, like what responsibility does Palm Beach County School Board have?
Well, the answer to the question is the district has a responsibility. I get that in a minute. And our committee, you have it right there in our chart. Our committee itself has a responsibility annually to review the financial conditions of the charter. So we are paid 5% of the FTE, the district is, and for that, we have a few employees, and we also have the entire charter school department that they go oversee it. Nobody can give you one answer, and the reason is because if you see all those different charter schools, Ms. News, approximately how many different charter contracts are there? And different variations of charter school contracts?
Well, there are 52 now charter schools, and so there could be that many different
right. Now, there's a lot of similarities, but the charter is a contract. And every contract, as you know, being in the business world, is specific. Now, there's a lot of overlap, don't get me wrong. It's not helter-skelter. But every school has a different charter, which means a different line saying what the district can and can't do. There's some overall riding policies of what we can and can't do. Ms. McBride can probably talk to it better, but I was involved when we first started them, and it's not good. So nobody can give you an answer, we're allowed to do this and not allowed to do that for every school. But there is an overriding responsibility of our school district, those 2 people, and the whole charter department to oversee. They have right to ask questions, to get financial statements broadly, and to flag them and let them know when they're not complying with their charter. Again, every charter is a little bit different, a little nuanced. Some are much stronger and will push back. Other ones will acquiesce. Other ones will just disappear in the middle of the night. So that's why I wanted to know who sponsors each one so we know how many different parties we're dealing with. But to answer your question, I don't think today's the right day to do it. What I'd like to do is have the person that took over all the charter school department come here to the committee, give a presentation, but before the presentation, put in our book an overview of the situation so the committee, because some of the members here are newer and they don't understand it. So it's been around for a while. Give an overview of what it is, and that way you can understand it, and then I have no problem with it. I think it's a good idea for our committee to look into it and give some advice of what possibly the charter school department can do to help them oversee these 50 schools, because it's an issue, and one of the biggest bottom line problems is in some instances the children are used as pawns for people trying to make a profit, which I'm against. Some charter schools have a purpose and they're good, and we want to, if they're good and they're helping children that our district can't necessarily help for whatever reason, excellent. But the ones that can't, we want to
So then,
know.
As far as the Inspector General's office for the school board, you all can go in and do internal audits, correct?
No.
No?
Yes.
Okay.
No, we can't.
Yeah.
If the contract allows.
Okay.
If we agree.
And then I'm just going to make a comment and yes, answer. Because I see on the news where these poor families and kids, are registered to go to charter schools, or the charter schools close in the middle of the year. So it's the kids that suffer.
Exactly.
And I'm sure.
Exactly.
And so that's why I'm trying to understand
Good.
it.
Well, that's why I'm saying what we should do is we're going to ask. I told Mr. Burke that we need to have the person over charter schools to come in, give a presentation, and in our book we'll have an overview before that presentation, because you guys all do your homework, which is great. So you read it, and we'll ask intelligent questions. So A, the committee can get up to speed on what we can and can't do, generally, and B, come up with some recommendations to help them, because it's an issue. It's definitely an issue. Ms. McDonald?
Yes. I'd appreciate that because we've talked about charter schools
Right.
before. And,
In the abstract.
Yes. I have a question for you, though. The report that you have reflected here shows under the first column that says fiscal year 18 financial review, there's some that have NA. I was just wondering why they would be not applicable to a financial review.
Just as the internal audit department or inspector general office uses a risk-based assessment, my department does as well. Because I have two dedicated staff working on charter schools now. Initially, one of the two was working on other areas, and so this past year I've now made him 100% on charter schools. And so we're going to be able to review more of the charter schools. But we use a risk-based approach based on which ones are new, turnover of staff, issues with compliance. If we're seeing consistent issues with the monthly compliance reports that financial statements that they submit, they would be selected. So we were using a risk-based approach with the FY18 review.
Well, let me just be clear. It's not just, it's a little misleading.
Yeah.
For them, it's NA, but it's not contractually NA. You made the determination. I'm not judge. I'm saying properly. There's only so many schools that they could do the review for, and the ones they did the review for are there. It's not really NA. It's just didn't review.
Well, and I do want to mention that we did look at every single monthly financial or quarterly financial statement. It wasn't just a comprehensive annual financial review that we did, where we ask for additional information more than what we're requesting on a monthly basis. And so the school district of Palm Beach County, any charter school that operates in Palm Beach County has to apply to operate. They go through a very rigorous application process, and once they're approved to operate in Palm Beach County, we then will enter into a contractual agreement. There is a standard model charter contract that DOE has developed. We can then negotiate between the charter school and the district school board. We can negotiate some of those terms within that model contract. So since DOE has developed that model contract, it has created some consistency. But as these charter schools, their charter school could be, their term could be from 5 years to 15 years. So that's why there's such variation in the contracts, because we could have a contract that's 10 years old. And so it's based on terms from 10 years ago. So as those contracts come up for renewal, we're able to make them more consistent and update them with the new language.
Well, my question, let me just go a little bit further with it. With the six, when we were looking at the top of that screen, there were 6 that are in trouble, and it looks like half of them have NA, which to me seems that those would be the ones that we would want to be focusing on if we know there's a problem there. And
right, but we've already identified that there is a problem with them, so they're already under a financial corrective action plan.
Gotcha.
So we are reviewing the monthly financial statements. Every single month, if they're high performing, they submit them quarterly. We also review their annual financial audit. We review their single audit. This year, we're also implementing new controls over federal grants, where we're going to sample the federal reimbursement requests, because each of the federal reimbursement requests for Title I and IDEA go through the different departments in the school district, and those departments are experts on what is truly allowable under Title I or IDEA, whereas my department is we're able to assist to make sure that they're actually complying with the real compliance requirements under the grant for areas like procurement. So we're going to be looking and sampling the reimbursement requests to make sure that they're complying with the federal grant compliance supplement that's out there. Because we did find with this past year that there were schools that just weren't really familiar with that they're required to do bids. They were required to maintain bid documents. So we want to make sure that all of our charter schools are complying with the federal grant compliance requirements. And the Florida statute is very prescriptive on what our requirements are. And really the purpose of it is making sure that we identify as soon as there is the potential of being in deteriorating financial condition, that the school district notifies the charter school board so that they can immediately start making decisions so that they don't go out of business. So there are specific requirements that we're looking at on a monthly basis. We make sure that their enrollment hasn't dropped below 70% of their projected enrollment. We're looking to ensure that their expenses don't exceed their revenues for more than 3 months. We're looking at their budgeted expenses, their actual expenses to their budget expenses, make sure that they don't exceed for more than 3 months. If they do, we as a district are required to send notification to the charter school board within 7 days. And we require them to submit a corrective action plan at that time, which that's where we had the issue with the audit finding that we're not getting that corrective action plan back within 30 days.
Right.
And we do have some complaints from our charter schools that we require a lot more in Palm Beach County than they do in other counties. But we make sure to go through the charter school contract and
Their complaint's valid.
because we want to make sure that they're following not only their own board policies, but state requirements as well as federal requirements, because they are receiving state funding and they are receiving federal funds, and it's very important that they're following all the procedures. They operate as a school, and they have all the same responsibilities that we have as a school district, and we hold them accountable for that.
Right. A lot of the districts in the state, in the United States, don't have the same oversight that we have.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I was asking about if there's a company that has charter schools all over, they're definitely going to complain around here, which to me is a good thing, but that's what happens. But our oversight is more intense, I suggest, anywhere else in the United States, probably. I mean, based on what we do. Mike knows, he goes to stuff.
Along the lines of what you're talking about, I don't know if you can answer this question, but let's just say G-Star School of the Arts that was established because of the need for the teaching kids in the arts. And you said they're going to be, there's another school, Charter Schools USA is coming in to take them out. Do they have the ability to change the charter and make it whatever they're doing in other schools?
No.
Or do they have to comply with however that school is chartered?
They can negotiate it. They can negotiate something different if they think it makes sense, because they don't think I did it, but they can try to, but.
Okay.
Right.
But the charter school, each charter school has to have their own governing board.
Right.
And the takeover is really with the management company.
Yeah.
But that management company should come in and they'll work for that board. So the purpose of the school, their contract with the district, all that should stay the same. It's really just that back office management, doing their payroll, doing their finances, all that type of stuff.
But in a good world, it doesn't mean that Charter School USA are going to give them the benefit of the doubt. Doesn't mean that they're not a better operating company than the individual running it. So they might have some recommendations and say, we could do this if you could change the charter. And they'll come in and they'll meet with the charter school department, I would assume, and try and negotiate some points to change. And they'll probably make that presentation that's better for everything. And then the experts will decide if it is or not. But they can't just randomly void a contract and start a new one. They're not allowed to do that.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Mr. Chu, what do you see as a common problem with Somerset? It looks like every single Somerset school is in red in the district. What is the issue? Or
those are all academica managed schools. So during this past fiscal year, there was a grant reimbursement request that was submitted for 2 schools, Somerset as well as a SLAM, and we encountered issues. It was towards the end of the audit, and they submitted a large reimbursement at the very end of the grant. And so that makes them high risk. And so at the time, I worked with the audit partner from RSM to say, what can I do to reduce this risk assessment for this grant, since they submitted such a large amount at the end? And so we had to do some additional procedures. As part of those additional procedures, we found that some of the invoices had been modified, some of the purchase order dates had been modified in order to make sure that they were within the grant period. And as a result, we disallowed the whole entire grant reimbursement request. As a result of that, I placed them as high risk, identified all academic managed schools as high risk, and required them to submit additional documentation during the FY19 year related to procurement, since the issue was related to procurement. During that review, I required them to provide bid documentation, bid tabulations, showing that they had conflict of interest, showing they properly bid out all of their contracts. And unfortunately, I found during this year that they didn't really have procurement procedures in place. They weren't actually bidding out any of their contracts, which is not allowed under their federal grant reimbursement requirements. So we've disallowed the additional amounts in this current year. And also as a result of what we found, their single audit was rescinded for FY18, and it was re-released just recently, and they did receive a modified opinion, which is the old qualified opinion. There was also, they identified the disallowance we had as a district as one of the audit findings as well. Academica is working very hard to implement new procedures. They have sent over new procurement procedures. They've reached out to our purchasing department as well for guidance. They really do want to make a change, and I do believe that it wasn't intentional. They just didn't know what the requirements were. And this wasn't just an issue in Palm Beach County. I mean, they operate I think it's close to 180 schools across the country. They're the largest in the state, and they are a high-performing charter school. So as a result, whenever we find an issue, we're going to look at it and we're going to assess all the schools, see whether it's just internal controls at that one single school site. In this case, I knew that it did impact all academic and managed schools, so that's why all of them are red. It doesn't mean that they're in a deteriorating financial condition. It just means we have a heightened sense of those are high risk, and we're doing more procedures prior to releasing any funds to them.
So if the school board is requested to approve another Somerset charter school, will we be able to deny that based on the fact they don't have procurement processes in place to meet the requirements of the law?
Well, we actually have 2 that are on hold right now for this particular reason, because since their single audit they are high performing. So right now, since they're classified as high performing charter school, we don't really have, in speaking with legal, the legal department, we wouldn't have a way to really truly deny them. But since their FY18 single audit report was rescinded and it was re-released with a modified opinion, the question that we've asked DOE is, does this impact their high-performing status? Because they're not allowed to have a modified opinion in their annual financial audit. So DOE is looking into that question because the single audit is a part of the annual financial audit, but normally when somebody thinks of the annual financial audit, they're thinking of just the financial statement audit. So they did submit 2 applications, and like I said, we have them on hold right now until we can determine whether they are actually high performing.
It's DOE. How long ago did the request go to DOE?
I asked the request over a month ago, and I sent a follow-up 2 weeks ago. And I spoke to somebody else from DOE probably a week ago. And so they're looking into it. The response I keep getting is they're looking into it and they'll get back to us. So, I mean, our legal department has been very transparent with Academica and speaking with their attorneys to let them know why we have the 2 applications on hold.
Right. So they know we're waiting to hear a response.
They do.
Okay.
They do. And like I said, they are actively working to put proper procedures in place and to comply. And they appreciate that we identified that they did have some weaknesses. I do feel like sometimes my department is acting like an audit department because it does feel like that. It's very compliance-based.
Right.
Making sure they're complying with the contract as well as state and federal requirements.
But it looks like, Mr. Barber, you'll have cover because they probably won't come to you until they get the answer anyway. But once they get their answer, you probably won't be able to deny them because they're probably going to get the clearance. That's the way I think it's probably going to go down. Ms. Manzo?
Just a comment. I heard you say that you thought it was unintentional, but the one concern I have is the intentional act of actually changing, invoice dates to that's intentional. That's not good. That's all.
Agreed. Mr. Bennett?
Yeah, I find it's interesting. If you look at their audit report, they had no internal control deficiencies, no instances of noncompliance, and no recommendations to improve financial management.
Yeah.
Seems to fly in the face of what's going on,
Well, Mr. Bennett, we've discussed this for many years, and the rest of the committee might will hear it now so they understand what my concern is. I don't have a lot of faith in the audits of the charter schools. Nothing
exactly
disparaging against the independent CPAs doing them, but I don't know how qualified they are in charter schools, and I don't know how detailed they look. And we've had schools, Ms. Noose will tell you, or when the charter school department comes in here themselves over the years, we've had charter schools that got clean audits, and the next thing you know, they're in trouble. So we've had that go on since charter schools started. So as you point out, it's interesting. As I point out, it's a problem. But we have a charter, and we can only do so much oversight to do what we're allowed to do, and charters are here. We can't make them go away. The best thing we could do is make the rules as hard as possible so we can, bother them enough where they complain and they won't want to operate in Palm Beach unless they're going to do it the way that we think's best for the students.
It's tough to fight the Florida legislature, isn't it?
It's difficult, sir. I've been up there a few times and I got phone calls about it, yeah.
And if I could I just wanted to introduce William Dufresne. He is the senior financial analyst in charge of charter schools, and he really, truly spends a lot of time. It is a lot of work. There are a lot of letters that we have to send. It's a lot of follow-up and due process, and it's just very repetitive, asking for the same thing over and over again. So I do want to recognize William for all the hard work that he does.
Thank you, William. Agreed. Any other questions?
When we have our workshop on charter schools, is it possible that it can also include, I guess from a legal standpoint, what are the things that we can do to impose greater restrictions?
Mr. Littlejohn, who's the expert in your department today?
Denise Sagerholm.
Denise is back. That's right, she's here. Yeah, Denise is very good. Okay, so we'll have Denise at that meeting if you don't mind, and we'll set that up. She knows, yeah. Very good. Mr. Chu.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes. Well, you're interrupting Mr. Chu. You said
I'm sorry, but I have another question on this issue before you move on. On HLB, I guess it's HLB, Gravier, LLP, CPAs that do these audits. I mean, if we contacted them and told them they missed all these issues, I mean, does somebody make them aware of the fact that they're not doing their job correctly and it would help the district?
Well, I don't know that they're not doing it. In all due respect, I never said they weren't doing it correctly.
Well, I'm not asking you to say anything. And what I'm saying is they've missed things that they should have caught, right? They missed some of these things that they should have found in their audits, and they gave them a clean bill of health. So is somebody telling them that they're missing things that they should be catching?
Yes, I did bring it to their attention, and that is why they rescinded their FY18 audit, because there was information that was withheld from the charter school. They do send, as part of the audit, they send in a confirmation letter to the district to ask us if there's any information that we're aware of. We responded, and I had evidence that we had responded to their audit firm. And when the audit report was released and nothing was mentioned in regards to the concerns that we had identified, I reached out to the audit partner. He responded back to say that that was a temporary worker who was working for him, and they never received the communication that we sent. He took the information that I provided. Like I said, he rescinded the audit report. They did their work, and then they changed their opinion to a modified opinion.
Okay, thank you.
So it's only as good as the information they receive, unfortunately.
Well, they could not, again, listen, to Mr. Barbieri's point, they could not issue an opinion until they have all the information, which they didn't do either. So I agree with you. I don't have all the facts, so I didn't want to say that. But yes, Mr. Chu.
Mr. Chairman, I understand that our policy 1.091, audit committee, there's a provision there that the audit committee also has certain responsibility in monitoring the charter school financials. I know that if we try to do that, then it will be a duplication of the budget department. So what I'd like to do is to have a quick meeting later on, talk with the charter school department, and see how we could coordinate to make some meaning out of all her analysis that what you need to do. There may be some policy decision that the board may want to decide to move on, because in order to take away the red or the yellow, something has to be done.
Well, things are being, I hear what you're saying. I think it's a good idea to have the meeting, and then when we have the workshop that you're talking about, I don't know if it's a workshop, but when we have that meeting, if you're ready at that time, you could present what you found out and make a suggestion. Maybe the policy needs to be changed or enhanced or something. So I encourage you to do that. Sure.
I'd like to meet with Ms. Kanu.
Mr. Bennett approved too. So.
And get this summary of the analysis and then see what we need to do in a big picture perspective.
Sounds good. You have no complaint from us. What else you have, Ms. News?
Well, no, I would just say it is difficult to be in the green category, so don't ever expect there to be all greens.
Correct. It's like the school audits. There are always going to be issues.
If I'm in charge of it, there's not going to ever be all greens. There can always be improvements.
Right. For those of you who are new to the committee, Ms. News is about as thorough as it gets, and she's very competent. So she's doing the right thing. And remember, I'll even say it about our own schools. The people doing charter schools, the people doing our own schools, they're not business people. They're mostly educators that are trying to help kids, even the majority of the charter schools. So their job isn't to do what Ms. News does. Ms. News is a stickler. She's very good, and she's protecting the districts and the state's resources and our money. So she's much better than the schools ever will be, so she's always going to find stuff. The question is, are they willing to listen and put the policies and procedures in place to protect the assets and protect the children? So we appreciate that, right? But you're never going to see, just like in our school audits, you're not going to ever find anything with no findings, because that's not what they do. Our job is to put the humanity on it and work within tolerance to get it done right. But no, I appreciate it. But it's a lot of work that you guys do, your whole department does. So we appreciate it. Any other questions from the committee? Thank you, Ms. News. And now we're going to go directly to, who's to the right of you? Mr. Burke, is that correct? You have something to tell us about crowdfunding?
I'm going to quickly hand it over to Ms. Leanne Evans, our district treasurer. Leanne's been helping us with this, and also along with Nancy Samuels. Nancy couldn't be here today, so Leanne is going to step in and take over for us.
Thank you, Leanne. If you're coming to the matinee next time, bring some popcorn now.
If I'd known in advance, I would have.
I know. Yes, ma'am.
I understand at a previous meeting there were some questions on fundraisers, so we wanted to come back to the committee to give you an overview of what we're doing and how we're doing it. So the presentation's coming up, and I'll just start with 2 years ago, it was July 2017, we amended School Board Policy 2.16, which is fundraising, to include a section on crowdfunding. It had never been covered in policy before. Typically, it is covering classroom-based fundraising, selling. They don't sell candy bars anymore, but that used to be the big thing. Raising money from the community for the schools. Crowdfunding has obviously become a huge thing in our society, so we wanted to address that. I'll say sponsor training is required for all type of fundraising. So anyone doing any type of fundraising at a school or department is required to go through some wonderful online training that Nancy Samuels and her team, Mary Sue Bean is the lead of that right now. They have developed that. So just like our other internal accounts training, there's training not only for the bookkeeper, but for all the sponsors. So if you want to go ahead, and you're all familiar with crowdfunding, so we have, in the policy, it states that people can use the approved platform for the district in order to use the district's name or the school's name. The only approved platform right now is Find It, Fund It, which is a crowdfunding solution that's developed by the Consortium of Education Foundations in the state of Florida. It's used by all the Ed Foundations, so we partnered with Palm Beach County's Ed Foundation to set this up, and so it's been in place for about a year and a half. What we found is many of the schools want something else. So Find It, Fund It is great. The way it works, money is raised, it comes into the Ed Foundation, they then cut a check to the school district, and we're putting it in the school's budget. So then it's going through our regular procurement process. We know exactly how the money's being spent. There's an approval process where the principal has to sign off on it. It flows through my office just to make sure that we're involving the appropriate department. If they're doing a garden of some sort, someone from facilities needs to contact them, that type of thing. So we've been using that, but for 2020, we're going to add in GoFundMe through Class Wallet, and we're going to talk about each one of these individually, and Donors Choose. So if you can go to the next slide.
Can I ask you a question first?
Sure.
I know you're sort of acquiescing because they've been asking for it.
Well, we made some changes. Find It, Fund It, the reason we liked that one is there's a lot of controls in place. There's an approval process. So if a teacher is raising money for a program, it has to go through their principal to make sure the principal approves it. GoFundMe by itself doesn't have that functionality, but we're actually going to the board later this month with a contract for Class Wallet. And Class Wallet, and go ahead and go to the next slide because it's going to get right to.
Thank you.
Class Wallet is going to be used for the classroom teachers supply assistance program. So for those of you that might not be familiar, there's money handed out through the legislature to teachers to buy classroom supplies. And what we've been doing the past few years is they have to sign an affidavit that they promised to do to give us the receipts, to comply with the rules, then we give them money. They go and buy it, and by February of the year, and it ends up being probably April, when all the receipts have to be submitted in order to comply with the IRS guidelines. We're implementing Class Wallet, which is being used throughout the country, quite frankly, as an alternative to that process. So now once the teachers that have been approved sign the electronic affidavit, the money is going to be loaded into an electronic wallet for them. And then they can spend from that wallet. So they can either buy directly through the Class Wallet platform, or they can go to Dollar Tree or Walmart and buy something and upload their receipt. So the receipts are captured right then, and then they're reimbursed for the money.
And you're comfortable with the internal controls of Class Wallet and the audit?
And if we have time, we can also, there's a video link that we can show you there. Stay on the first, don't go to the next slide yet. There's some more I want to talk about here. Class Wallet, that's the teacher supply. What Class Wallet also brings to it is they have a platform that links in with GoFundMe. So the teachers would do a program, they want to raise money for a project, they do that in Class Wallet. They fill everything out, the approval goes through Class Wallet to the principal, and once it's signed off, then they get linked up with GoFundMe. It automatically creates the page for them. And all the money that comes in, instead of going directly to the teachers, which is how GoFundMe normally works, instead will go into their electronic wallet at Class Wallet, and the spend is done that way. All receipts are captured, all the purchases are tracked. We have a lot of controls when they go through that Class Wallet platform to access GoFundMe. That's why we're comfortable using it, because we have adequate controls in place. So it's very different than just going through GoFundMe directly.
Good.
Additionally, GoFundMe has reduced the fees, so it's down to about 2% that they're collecting for processing this. It was close to 17%, so they've dropped it down.
Who pays the 2%? Each individual project?
It's netted out of each project.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, go ahead and go to the next one. Donors Choose is the other option that's out there that we're going to approve. And Donors Choose works very differently than the others. Teachers will go out and request items. They're not raising money. They're trying to get items. So they're trying to get a computer or a printer. So they request those items, and then they go out, crowdfunding happens, the money goes to Donors Choose. Donors Choose will go buy the item and have it delivered. One of the things that we have found with Donors Choose that made us a lot more comfortable is we can upload our technology specifications and requirements. So we can hand that to Donors Choose, and they will make sure the technology they're buying, and a lot of this is technology for the classrooms, they'll ensure it's in compliance with our specs, which that has always been an issue with IT. When somebody goes out and buys a computer and they want to hook it up to the network, it may not have all the requirements that we need to make sure we have a safe environment.
Good.
So that's a big change there. And that's one of the reasons we're comfortable with Donors Choose. So we'll be sending a bulletin out to the teachers, to all staff. The policy is written in such a way that it's any district approved vendor. We're just expanding that group of vendors.
What's the fee on this one?
We don't really know, because they're not collecting money. They're going out and asking for items.
Right.
They're a conduit. And what we found with Donors Choose, they will raise some money, but then the people at Donors Choose are very well connected with very large philanthropists. They will have there was a story that came around about a year ago. A large Bitcoin company came and funded everything on Donors Choose and paid for everything nationwide. So you see a lot of things where very large companies, I looked at some of the things that are out there lately. They've been completely funded by Google or by Facebook. So very large companies are coming in and giving a lot of money, and then Donors Choose is providing all the materials.
So that's the good part of it, which I understand, and there's a lot of probably corporate charity work being done, which is good. What about the other side, where we find out that someone bought a 3D printer, but they paid $5,000 when they could have bought it for $1,500? Because could that possibly happen here?
When you go into Donors Choose, we can see the donations and how much money was raised. But this is a little different because the teachers aren't going and asking for money. They're asking for an item. And then what happens behind the scenes, Donors Choose is raising the money to buy the item.
Okay, so
they are providing, they have changed the way they function. They're giving a lot of reports. I've signed up to receive all the reports from Donors Choose. So once a month I get a report that shows all the fundraising they've done on our behalf and what they've purchased and who it was delivered to. So it's all being delivered directly to schools. It can't go to an individual.
Okay, so Mr. Chu wants me to ask a question. I guess I'll ask it. On both of these, we had the issue with a famous 3D printer a few years ago. On either one of these, Donors Choose or the other, who owns the item when it arrives at the school?
All of this will belong to the school.
The district owns it.
The district owns all of this.
Is that okay with you?
This is going to run directly to the district. I've been in discussions with Mr. Littlejohn, and he's aware of this. And one of the concerns we had is the items were going out and they belong to the people that were doing
Correct.
the fundraising.
Right.
So one of our responsibilities is to make sure when we put the bulletin out to say you can access GoFundMe, it must go through Class Wallet. Teachers cannot go directly to GoFundMe. They have to go through Class Wallet. So
And is
that's
there-
going to be an educational process.
And is it, as part of the process explaining that the asset belongs to the district?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Right.
So we don't have that happen again. Okay, good.
We've also had instances where somebody has called and said, you know, we've got a GoFundMe and we want to get the money. We have to provide the school district's tax ID number.
Yeah.
And I was like, no, thank you. We can't
Right.
do that.
That's
That's you're not doing, that's not following proper procedure.
Okay.
So this will all be under our tax ID.
Ms. Manson, you don't want to wait till she finishes? You want to
I
interrupt?
have a question. We're talking about capital assets. I just want to have a question. What is the capital asset limit or minimum for Palm Beach County?
It's $1,000, and that's state mandated. I've tried to
I
get
know.
them to go up to 5,000,
And that's why I just wanted to make a comment, because I just got finished with the Palm Beach County Inspector General's doing a capital asset audit for my municipality. And the teachers, which we didn't know, you need to get a fair market value, not the value. If you're and they want, you'll probably want them to know that, because this is something I didn't know either. You cannot take that value that the person that's donating it gives you.
Right.
We ourselves have to go out and get that value. And okay. Well, when
that's
we're
all.
purchasing
Good point.
through Class Wallet, and GoFundMe, which I think is going to be a lot of the use, we can actually see the receipts and the items. All that information is available online that we'll have access to. And there's great reporting behind it. So we will have access to all of that. For Donors Choose, we can see the items that were purchased. And Nancy Samuels has been working with me. She and I are partnering on this project, and all the asset people work directly for her. So we'll make sure that that's covered as this is implemented.
Yeah, we're learning from your mistakes.
Which
Do you
is
want to tell us
wonderful
which
because-
municipality? You want to speak
Pardon me?
which municipality you want?
Lantana.
I know. I'm kidding. I know. Mr. Bennett.
Question for Debbie. You had assets donated to the town?
We did.
Okay.
We had.
Were they new or used? Or?
I'll tell you one, we did a new sports complex, and the contractor that did it, West Construction, donated 3 scoreboards. He valued them at $3,700 a piece. We used that value, and we did not know that, told us what the value was, that we had to get the fair market value, not take it from the
There's a good
donator.
reason for
So.
that.
Yeah, we know they're good.
Yeah, they get a tax donation,
That's right.
a tax deduction for it, so they have an incentive to overstate the value.
Right, of course. Yeah.
Again,
Yeah.
just something
We
that
got
I
it. We
would not,
appreciate
and if it's the employee that has to, or teacher,
No,
that's
no.
responsible
They'll
for
take care of it.
getting that fair market value, because I can't imagine that Mike Burke's office, all of his staff is going to be going and with all these assets that are donated and getting fair market values. I don't know what your
I
process
think
is.
we'll probably
but-
find a way to centralize that. We
Yeah.
have the
Yeah.
centralized
They will centralize
reporting,
it.
so we'll find a way to do that.
So just.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you
I
for
have a
passing it
question.
on.
So on the Donors Choose with the wish list, are there dollar amounts assigned to each
Yes.
item?
Yes.
And is
as you
it
said.
designated by who sets it up
Donors
or by
Choose,
where
well,
they go and buy it?
No, when the
Buyer?
teacher requests they're trying to buy a printer, they're just going to describe they want a printer. Donors Choose will go and raise money, they will find the printer, and then they'll have it delivered to the school. The reports they provide indicate that they bought a printer and this was the value of it. Again, we'll have to verify those values, but we can see that, as well as the different donations that were made. So the reports, I could see that Google donated X amount of money towards this project, and we received that level of detail. It's in a spreadsheet, we can download it.
Nice.
So it's
Yeah.
data that we can work with.
It's a good trail.
Yeah.
It's a good trail. Yes.
That's a good question.
This one.
From the principal's perspective, I heard you say there's an approval process for
There
the
is.
class wallet, but
Right.
what about for Donors Choose?
Donors Choose does not have a process built into the system. Part of the sponsor training that anyone doing a fundraising goes through is to tell them that it has to go to the principal. We have our own district form. So there is a district form that needs to be filled out whenever there's a fundraiser. So whoever's doing the fundraising is required to get that form signed out by the principal.
So the teacher can't go directly into here and just have the item delivered to the school without the principal having.
They should be completing the process that's required in policy, the training and the form that needs to be filled out for every fundraiser. Whether they're doing the the sale, I'll use the candy bar sale, which doesn't happen anymore, the principal signing off for any type of fundraiser, whether it's that or crowdfunding, the principal should be signing off on all of them.
Okay.
Right.
And can I just make a suggestion? When you were talking about the bulletin or the memo that's going to come out for teachers, they are under the impression when they get these items that if they move to a different school, that it travels with them because they are the ones who requested it and they feel like, so that just probably needs to be clear. I know you said that, but.
Right. Good point.
Right. Thank you.
Very good. No, we appreciate
that.
That's a good point. I'm taking this with me.
Yep.
Personal asset for the district.
When we relocate in our offices, we take the furniture with us. Old furniture.
All right, let Ms. Evans finish.
Nobody else wanted.
Very nice.
So this is just a summary.
Appreciate
the
it.
idea is this fundraising would happen and they'd spend out of their wallet if they're using Class Wallet or Donors Choose will buy the item. All the spending and the receipts are audited and will be reviewed and audited internally. We're just trying to formalize, even though we have crowdfunding in place and said only use Find It, Fund It, we heard loud and clear they're doing other things. So we want to put this in policy and make it right so that they can do what they need to do, but with the appropriate controls in place. So there is also the option with Class Wallet, only at district approval, and this will be with Nancy Samuels, there is an option if they're raising money for a trip. You know, the school is going on a trip and they're doing fundraising, the money can be placed on a debit card, and the spend on that debit card would also be monitored. That's not something we're opening up. That's something we have the ability to do and will be done on a case-by-case basis, only with the approval of our accounting department and only for approved trips. So
It'd be dangerous, yeah.
that would be very carefully monitored.
Well, I appreciate what you and Ms. Samuels are doing, because this is a good area. It helps the schools, helps the internal controls, keeps cash out of the schools. Very good. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Appreciate it.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
So you can see that our workload will be increased too because of the new fundraising process.
No, the whole loop is closed by Ms. Evans. You're fine.
We try to work very hard with audit to help them out. We give them online access to bank accounts,
I think it's another,
to accounting systems.
we appreciate that there's another job security.
Mr. Bennett.
Is there any chance we can crowdfund Mr. Chu's new employees?
Good luck.
Does your business want to donate?
That's good. I like that.
Well, we own them now.
Are there any other items we need to act on? 8.0, accreditation by commission. We saw that. That's excellent, Mr. Chu.
Thank you.
Chu, we saw that.
Thank you, Mr.
Investigative report, that's for our information, FYI, right?
And if I could ask one
Yes.
question on that. So I just didn't understand completely whenever I read that, if we received all the products that we prepaid for. I know that it was canceled
Oscar.
for the remainder of the bid award, but they had already paid out almost half, and
How'd you reconcile that?
Yeah, they have not received all the product.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think
300 and some thousand, like
that was the
363,
initial payment
343.
that they
Right.
prepaid
Prepayment.
on that. We've gotten some of the science kits back, and legal was working to try to get some money back from the vendor.
Yes, Mr. Littlejohn.
I happen to work on that, so maybe I can help a little bit here. We did settle with the vendor. We did a detailed, the department did a detailed inventory of what was received, what wasn't received, and we cut them a check for the balance of what was due and docked them for what was not received or was substandard.
Okay, because I saw some of the products were broke as well, or the items in.
So the inventory was school by school, and they went through, it was pages and pages of a spreadsheet, and then they assigned the bid value to each one of those things, and I think it turned out that there was about $16,000 worth of goods that were either not delivered or were substandard. So that was deducted off of what we ended up.
The final payment.
Okay.
Good, so you did reconcile. Very good.
So any recommendations moving forward with prepayment of contracts?
It's disallowed by law.
Yeah.
They shouldn't do
Okay.
that.
Yeah.
Okay.
That was a one-off.
And also, Mr. Chairman, I think we put an update in that report at the very end about the standards that was being negotiated by legal.
Yeah.
So we indicated in the report to make sure that all the loops, all the gaps are closed.
Right, we should not see that again. Thank you, good point. Okay, any general comments? Mr. Chu,
Sorry,
what do you want to tell us?
July 31st is our big day for the workshop. Number one, we're going to present our work plan to the board for discussion. And part of it, we will embed our presentation today to the board, anticipating the discussion.
What time is that presentation, Mr. Chu?
Usually start at 2 o'clock. 2 o'clock, but we'll find out more detail. Yeah,
I'm sure
maybe
they
later.
do.
But we will let you all know, so that I hope that you all can come join us.
I'll be in West Virginia, but I know you all do a wonderful job. I've been through one of your, whenever you meet with the board. And
no, it's better
so
if you
do
come.
Excellent.
and then you all, if you don't have the time to come, you can always talk to your appointed.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Everybody should talk to their appointee if they have any
members, yeah.
issues or comments on it. That would help a lot.
I think, yes.
Okay.
Right?
Appreciate it, yes.
Okay. Mr. Barbieri, I recommend what he says. Okay, good. Any general comments? Okay. Any motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Thank you. Thank you. Long meeting. Second.
Thank
All in
you.
favor. Thank you very much.